Hi, this is James, and I'd like to welcome you to a reading that was inspired by a friend of mine. So what happened was yesterday, which was Friday, October the 21st, 2016, so I'm filming this on Saturday, October the 22nd of 2016, she reached out to me through Facebook. She sent me a personal message, and in the message she asked me if I had thrown the cards, I'm using her words, thrown the cards about the upcoming presidential election here in the United States. And so I told her that I hadn't. But she asked me, like, if I would I be willing to let her know where I posted so she could have access to it. So I got to thinking about it because, as many of you know here on my YouTube channel, if somebody sends me a request about a particular topic, and probably one I hadn't considered on doing on my own, would I be willing to do some videos around it? And so here we have a situation where that was the case. So I gave it some thought, and I realized that I had used the Lenormand in my weekly readings, and in some of those posts, especially around debate time, I mentioned things about the presidential candidates or about the election itself. And so I thought, well, since I've already mentioned it using the Lenormand, that would be the system I would use for doing this reading. So what you're about to see is a Grand Tableau I laid last night. So again, that was on Friday, October the 21st, 2016. I did it at 11 o'clock at night, or right before I went to bed, because I was feeling motivated to do it in the moment. So what you're about to see, like I'm saying, is a Grand Tableau for that question. So the question was about just generally speaking, what do we need to know about the upcoming United States presidential election? And the deck that I used for that reading is the Classic Lenormand. It is by Alexandre Musruck. And if you're watching this and I'm saying your name wrong, please forgive me. But Alexandre, he is a divination and oracle card expert who has his own channel here on YouTube. So I will post a link to his deck. If you watch the video and you find the deck interesting and you'd like to get a copy, I will post both a link to the deck itself as well as a link to his channel so you could check him out if you're not already familiar with who he is. So having said that, now let's get to the table and take a look at that Grand Tableau. And here we are with the Grand Tableau as I laid it out. And so I'm going to be sharing some of the initial impressions that I got once I laid down the tableau. So the first thing I usually do with the tableau, that I usually look for the significator cards, and in this particular case, the woman is going to be Hillary Clinton and the man is going to be Donald Trump. So here we have the woman card, and she has fallen into the house of the child. So for me, the child represents something new, something beginning, something that's starting up. So for me, that was a possible indication that the cards were talking about her new term as President of the United States. So that was the first thing that struck me. Then the very next thing that struck me was I looked for the man card, and the man card is here as the last card in the tableau. So there's two things that struck me with this. First, the man is in the house of the cross. And so the cross can be a position that represents difficulties, it represents burdens, things of that nature. So for me, it represents like this. He's in a difficult spot right now, literally. Difficult spot right now, just by this placement. It could also be that the man is in this space where he's feeling a lot of criticism, potentially some persecution. You know, he's been talking lately about the whole process being rigged and rigged against him. So there's that idea of persecution with that. And also, too, persecution in terms of all the women who have been coming out against him in terms of saying that he allegedly groped them, touched them, things like that. So there is persecution about that. The other thing here, and this is more of a positive slant on the cross. The cross for me can also be about having faith. And so a lot of people are placing their faith in him, and I'm talking about in terms of his supporters. So there are people who are placing a great deal of faith in this man. in terms of running for president. So there's two sides there. So, but I'm guessing my first impulse was I looked at this as like saying he's literally in a difficult spot or a difficult position. The other thing here is that these four cards are what I read as the essence line. And so for me, they fall out of the tableau. The tableau is really the 32 cards that are framing here. They are forming the picture or the tableau. Any cards that come out of the tableau, for me, they're saying they're not a part of the bigger picture. So just by that placement again, suggests that he's out of the picture. Like it's really, at this point, it's really all about Hillary Clinton and not so much about Donald Trump. Now, the only other thing here that could happen would be Bouquet is next to the man. So it could be, unless some surprise happens, you know, this is the way it's really shaping and looking. So going with that, then I looked for, well, what about the American people? So garden can represent a group or community. So I looked for that card next. And garden is actually in the same essence line as the man card. The garden is over here. And the garden is in the house of the key. And so for me, the key can represent something important, an answer or solution. It can represent a discovery, a breakthrough, revelation. But it can also represent the truth for me, because usually if I'm looking to see what's true in a situation and I'm doing a tableau, I will always look to see where the key card is. But with garden in the house of the key, it could be like at this point, people want answers. Talking about the American public, they want answers, they want solutions. At this point, they want answers and solutions to the problems that we're experiencing as a nation, as a whole. They want answers and solutions, and they also want the truth. And so if we go with the idea here that the possibility here with the cards indicating that Hillary Clinton could become the president, then people want answers. They want solutions. They want the truth, especially from her, because she's got, it's not just Donald who has scandal, but she also has her own share of scandals, and people want truth about that. So I'm seeing that in connection to that. Then I look to see where, what card fell into the house of the garden, which would be the people. And here we have mice. So mice is a card that can represent loss. It can represent stress. It can represent worry. It can represent a gradual decline or a gradual erosion of something. So for me here, there's a lot of stress and worry pertaining to the American people about this election. So I'm seeing that. And also, too, the American people are also fearing like there's going to be more decline rather than a turnaround. So I'm seeing that as a possibility. Then I looked for the first three cards in the tableau to tell the story. So we have ship, we have the ways, and then we have coffin. So as a summary, or reading them as, you know, a combination, the first thing that struck me was ship can be a journey. Ways is about choices, options, alternatives. And then the coffin can represent something coming to an end, something being completed. I tend to read it as something being finalized, or something final, or seeking some kind of closure. So if we were to take all three cards as a combination, they could be read as, you know, the journey towards a final decision, if we go with journey being ship and then final decision being the ways and coffin as a pairing. So I'm seeing that. But a lot of people could be looking into or going into this election feeling like their options are limited, because I tend to look at coffin as limitation and restriction. So people are also going into this feeling like their options are limited. You know, even with the idea here, some people may share the idea here that, you know, sometimes a matter of voting is about voting for the lesser of two evils. But with this combination, a lot of people may be even feeling like they don't even have that, you know, because a lot of people, for one reason or another, don't like either candidate. So I'm seeing that as the story going into the situation. And then what struck me is I looked at the corner, I saw ship in one corner, and then clouds, the most challenging card in the deck by some, in the other corner. So here it could represent an uncertain journey because the ship being journey, and then clouds can represent confusion, uncertainty, doubt. So if you go with the idea here that the pair is talking about an uncertain journey, it reminds me of the expression like, where do we go from here? Where are we going? Where are we headed? And there's a lot of uncertainty and doubt about that. And also too, clouds can represent atmosphere. So, you know, there's this air or this atmosphere of doubt and uncertainty going forward. So that caught me in the moment. And then what I did was I looked to see what cards were surrounding each significator. So here with the woman, we have the anchor above her. And so this is what's on her mind. So the anchor is a work-related card. It can also represent long-term work. So I noticed that. And then the other thing that struck me was sometimes this card is about securing something. So in her mind, she may already have the idea here that she's got this secured. She's got this position secured. And, you know, it made me think of the idea here, like, you know, I got it on lock. So, you know, thinking like she's got it locked down. She's not going anywhere. She's in. So there may be thoughts about that in her mind, that she's already got this in the bag, so to speak. And then I also noticed that right below her is the house. So literally it's saying to, like, she's standing on the house, going with the placement. And then right below the house is the tower. So here we have a combination that could be a house and then big house, where, you know, child can represent small because she's in the position of the child or in the house of the child. The tower can be something big. So here we have, if we go with the house that's big, then that could be a play on the White House. And then going with that, then I noticed that the tower card is in the house of the woman. So it's like, again, another way of saying like she's got it on lock or she's in. The tower in this case for me can represent something being made official. So it could be, again, another way of saying like she's officially going to become the president. So I noticed that. It could also be too, again, commenting on the woman herself. You know, it could be like she's a politician, of course. It's going to be something that's official for her. So I just noticed that. And then the tower can also be elevation of status. So she's moving from one position, being Secretary of State, to now becoming President of the United States. So that's an elevation in status. So I noticed that. And these are all in her present. This column is the present for her. And then this row is her present. So these all cards are right here in the present. So this is how it's looking right now according to the Lenormand, which I thought was very interesting. And then I went to see what was around the man. And so the interesting thing here is right above him is the mountain. So the mountain is a card of, you know, challenge. It's about block. It's about an obstacle. For me, it could represent, like for him, it's about an uphill battle. So I'm seeing that as a possibility there with that. And then what I did was I looked for the card that would connect them. And so what I did was here and here, and then I went up to the card that was connecting them. And here we have the scythe. And so the scythe is a card that can represent a division, a split, or a separation. So that's describing their relationship to some degree. Here, for me, it represents like the idea here of the energy of their relationship between the two candidates. And especially if you could tell as a result of the debates. It's been noticed that they started the first debate shaking hands, and then the space or the separation between the two has become wider and wider. In the second debate, they were within a few feet of each other, and then the last debate, they stood at their podiums and didn't even come anywhere near each other. So that for me was like telling about that, like there's some sort of divisive energy between them. So I'm seeing that with the scythe. And since the scythe is right next to the woman, for me, I looked at this as there are people who are still disconnected from Hillary Clinton, because I also read this card as disconnection, the scythe. And so since it's right next to her, there are still people who have the sense of disconnection because they don't trust her. And going with that, it's very interesting because then I noticed that her card knights the fox. And the fox for me, in the not so nice sense, can be about like a con, about a scam, about manipulation and being taken advantage of. So there are people who don't trust her, and so that's reinforced two ways. So I noticed that. Then with one card over, with the scythe and the heart, not only is there a sense of disconnection, but for some people it's very passionate. I mean, they are really fired up about this sense of separation or the sense of disconnection they have from her. And then again, these two cards can only also, point out too, like part of the disconnect is because of her emotion. She doesn't come across as very feeling, very emotional, so there's that energy here. She may be more sharp intellectually speaking than more feeling. And so I'm going with that as a possibility with the scythe and the heart. But I noticed because they're in her row. So I noticed that. Then on the other side of her row, here at the very end, because the woman on the card is facing this direction, even though her body is facing this way, I always tend to look to see where her vision is or her line of sight, and so she's looking this way. So what I did was, this is the future. If you go with the idea here, she's looking this way. So the stork is the farthest card out in the row. So going with that, at some point, she's got her eyes set on making some changes, making some improvements, which is what the American people want as well. They want things to change and want things to improve. But here it's at the very end of the row, which means that there are some other things that may happen on her way getting to that. And then I looked at the card next to that, which was birds, and birds for me can represent, along the way towards improvement, there may be a lot of frustration, because birds from an emotional standpoint for me can be about frustration and can also be about anxiety. So as we're working towards changing things and improving things, there may be a lot of frustration that people experience with her in terms of what she's doing. So I'm seeing that. And then the interesting thing here, then I looked one card over to stars, and for me stars can represent being online, because I see this as an internet card. So going with that, birds can be about conversation and communication, and then with the internet card here, the stars, the first thing that struck me was tweeting. So, there's a thing about, like, another thing that may be in her favor too, may be what people are saying about her on social media. And of course, I'm sure there's good and not so good, but social media could be something that may be helpful to her in terms of becoming the president of the United States. So that wasn't lost on me about the idea about Twitter, but not just Twitter, but also forms of social media. And so I already touched on the fact that the woman card touches or knights the fox, but she also knights the sun. And then the sun is a card of success. So I noticed that. And then I also noticed that she also knights the mountain. So while she may be successful, she's still going to have to work through this idea here with the fox card about not being trusted. And that for her, because I also noticed that while the mountain was above the man card, it's also knighting her. So it's not going to be, smooth sailing, going back to the ship, smooth sailing. It's not going to be smooth sailing for her either. She's got a great deal of challenges she has to face. It's going to be an uphill battle for her as well. And then to round things out and to kind of bring this initial impression reading to a close, I looked to the essence line, because while a lot of this was pointing to Hillary Clinton, well, what might be the next thing upcoming for Donald Trump? So then I looked to see what the cards here were for him in the essence line. We have the garden, we have the snake, we have the bouquet, and then the man. First thing I noticed, that even though his body is facing these three cards, his direction is over here to this side, to the right, and there's no cards there. So there may be something about that as well that, we may need to take into account. There may be, again, going with the idea, not only is he in a difficult spot, he's in the last card in the reading, but there's nothing coming after that. The other thing that struck me here, if we read the line, possibly, garden can be about the public, something public, something social. Snake is about complication. For me, it can also represent an entanglement, but I can also see this as a scandal, possibly. And then bouquet is a card that can represent something that comes as a surprise. So the way I would read this would be the possibility here of a public scandal that comes as a surprise, either about the man or by the man. And so right now the biggest thing here would be the idea here, would he be there in terms of the transfer of power? Because everybody's talking about that on social media and on the news. You know, this idea here, like if he was to lose the election, would he be present for the transfer of power? And he is saying like he's going to keep people in suspense, he's going to keep people waiting. So for him, that might be his last gamble here in terms of a surprise. Now, the other thing I noticed here in terms of a scandal is that both the snake and the bouquet have face cards, and they are both queens. The snake is the queen of clubs, and then the bouquet is the queen of spades. So there may be some more scandal or some more complications involving women and Donald Trump as we get closer to election time. So that is how I will wrap this up. So I hope that you have found this helpful, informative. I figured once my friend asked me and I saw how the cards laid out, I figured I had to make a video and share it with those who find my Lenormand videos of interest. So I will end things here. I will sign off, and as I sign off, I encourage you, if you work with the cards and if you see other things and you want to share this with me, please post them as the comments and we can get a conversation going, because I always love to hear what other people are seeing, because I only see things one way, my perspective, and my perspective is not the only perspective. So again, this is Jameson Mitchell. I'm signing off, and as I sign off, I'm wishing you a wonderful day, and until we get together in the next video, take care.